we're going to have a talk about something that has pissed me off, and I'm going to let it fly. Okay? But before I do, I want to tell everyone that I hate racists. I don't like racism for anybody. If I have hatred for the human race, it's for the human race. And then you as an individual have to prove yourself out of that. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so that being said, I don't like, obviously, I don't want to have to repeat myself, but I don't like racism. I don't like it. No. Because the whole human race acts trashy. The whole human race acts trashy. You try to limit that to one group of people. I'm going to tell you something. Any group of people who tries to say that their people are holy and they don't commit the same kinds of crimes is wrong. The worst people I've ever met in my entire life tell other people how good they are. This is, if it's true on a micro level, it's true on a macro level. So, like, the people who tell you, a culture, a society, or a religion that tells you how good it is really bad. I've never known a good person who had to give themselves a preamble about their character. And if you're a good person, you show people by your behavior. You don't show them by your fucking words. You don't need some fucking preamble. In fact, if you're a Bible-believing person, let's go with the Bible verse. The first person to bring their cause before a judge seems right in the judge's eyes until his brother comes to cross-examine him. The consistent thread in Proverbs it's referring to that anyone could point out, you don't need a Bible to know this, by the way. There's other holy books that say or not holy, rather, books of philosophy that say very similar stuff. In fact, you can learn it in English class. In English class, they tell you, show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. If you try to turn in an English paper in college where you tell the professor a narrative essay, you're going to get an F or a D. You're not going to be very good at English. If you want to write good papers, you have to show. You have to make the person who read your paper think they came to that conclusion on their own because they put themselves in your shoes. If you have to tell someone you're a good person and you're not able to demonstrate, you're just trying to fucking jerry-rig a fucking rip-off, man. That's all that is. It's just a rip-off. Okay, so now that we've handled this, that the human race is generally... Oh, one more. The Yale baby study. For those of you who are doubting me right now, oh no, there's some group of people out there who's special and holy, and they don't commit the same crimes as everyone else. Well, first of all, they're probably worse criminals. Because, like I said, good people never call themselves that. They show you by their activities. Not their words, their preamble. Secondly, the Yale baby study took babies between 3 and 6 months old who had never been abused in their lives. There was no documented cases of abuse. I mean, if the parent looked at them cross-eyed, I don't know, but there was no overt abuse, okay? They had these babies vote with their eye contact. Babies at 3 to 6 months old will stare for a long time at something that they like, and they'll engage with it visually. But when a baby sees something they don't like, they turn their gaze away and they try to blackball you and socially isolate you with their eye contact. So they already show that discernment. Now, at 3 to 6 months old, 20% of babies watching a puppet show preferred puppets that stole toys, stole crackers, slammed lids down on other puppet babies unprovoked, and generally did non-pro-social, very destructive behavior. 20% of non-abused infants, 20% of non-abused infants, it looks like she found a dent on her car. I'm not trying to pick on them, they just happen to be parked right in front of here. Maybe it was someone who was parked next to them, I don't know. Okay, so 20% of infants 3 to 6 months old prefer to watch bullies in a puppet show. It's a little over 20%, roughly. And I know all of you will say, but look, that means that 80% of babies like good behavior. They like to watch helpers in a puppet show. You're right, 80% of them do. But I want you to know something. That little 20%, Andrew Bustamante is a CIA book author who goes on YouTube all the time, and he said the first thing they taught him and his wife in spy school was that 20% of the general population prefers bullies, and if there's no social consequence for bullying, they'll try to get away with it. The only thing that stops them is a social consequence that damages their image. That's it. That's the whole fucking thing. And so if you've got the whole thing, and I wonder if they drove right past me because they thought I was videotaping them. I actually just was pointing off into the audience, off at Wells Fargo, but so that means that the CIA is teaching their operatives who write books, and they're not telling him to take his books off the shelves, that 20% of the public as adults is the exact same way. Guess what that means? That means that the Yale baby study and the CIA book author Andrew Bustamante are saying the exact same thing. It gets worse, guys. There's something that operates in economy called the Pareto factor, which is 80% of people produce, 20% of people usurp or scrounge or exploit the producers, kind of drive them on, herd them, however you want to look at it. So, but it's not just humans. It's present in all species on Earth, all communal species on Earth. When we see survival of the fittest and evolutionary progress, we look at interspecies competition for evidence. What we do, that is the outside of the grandfather clock, my friend. If you were to look at the inside gears, you would see intraspecies competition, which means each community species on Earth has 20% of their own kind that are chronically going after your ass. They're out to get you. If you're a dolphin, 20% of dolphins are out to get you. Do you know that if you are a spider, I looked it up, the Pareto principle operates with spiders. Do you know that 20% of spiders wait for their other spiders to find something in their web and try to steal it from them? They put collars on lions in the Sahara, and they found out that 20% of lions lie back and lounge and let the 80% put themselves in the line of fire to take down the prey, and then they come and they eat the meat like it's a happy day. It's intraspecies evolutionary constriction to produce competition. All right? So now you've got the Yale baby study, science, economy, saying the Pareto factor, and you have CIA book author, and all of these people are telling you the same goddamn thing. They're telling you that 1 out of 5 people is born and stays a bully and a preferrer of bullies from birth. From birth, baby. Not from like later on down the road. Oh, they got traumatized. No. And it's not just humans. It's an evolutionary construct of competition to create survival of the fittest, which means if you got a problem with it, you need to talk to your creator or someone else, because I didn't invent this. Now I'm down to one person. Good morning, Liston Abner. Hello. So now we've got this situation where we've had 30 people come and go off my channel, 6, 5, 10. We've discussed racism. We've discussed the Yale baby study, the Pareto factor. We've discussed CIA book author Andrew Bustamante and the findings that he has. We're going to go on to the next thing, shamanism. Do you know that shamanism in all tribal people worldwide, do you know the Germans, a lot of people don't know this, before the Romans took over Germany, there was like these tribal people running around Germany with crazy long hair and weird beaded ass necklaces, and they had shamans, and they were tribal, and the majority of them were genocided if they wouldn't come over and live in a city. Guess what? In Norway, the same thing happened. Guess what? In England, I've heard the same thing. Do you know that they found even the little feather headdress they find on natives that we're so used to? If you go back like 1,000 years or more into the European and the white stuff, white shamans and chiefs and shits and people were wearing all kinds of weird ass feather hats that look almost identical. Okay? This is not exclusive to one group of people. Yes, they all have their special, it's a small world expression of it. But shamanism is not, I heard a white person say this the other day, and I'm not racist. Go back to the beginning of my video if you don't understand that. I heard a white person the other day was on a YouTube video, and she was like, I saged my house, but she's like, then she was like, I feel like, she's like, I know this is cultural appropriation, I'm sorry, and all this. And I was like, girlfriend, I don't have nothing against some fucking like native shamans, but like, it's not cultural appropriation. There, you can go over and watch this fucking Norse lady from like Norway, who is still a shaman living in the woods, who fucking does all kinds of weird shit all day long. Her family just kept doing it, just like some natives did. There is a shaman for every tribal people of every country in the world. If you're practicing shamanism, you are not practicing cultural appropriation. This is a worldwide phenomenon. I couldn't believe I heard someone say this. No. I heard a native girl say it to me once. 2 different native girls tried saying this shit to me. And I was like, when white people get racist, I confront them. Am I not supposed to confront you? So I had a native girl say, she was like, well, everybody knows that natives are more spiritual than white people. 2 different native women told me that. And I was like, the fact that you said that you're more spiritual than white people would then, I can't say it about the rest of the natives because you don't speak for them, but you yourself as a native, by saying that you're more spiritual, just proved that you're more carnal and less spiritual. Any person who said that would be. If I walk around saying I'm holy, guess what? I'm a corrupted bastard. If I walk around telling you how spiritual I am, I guarantee I'm only advertising because I'm real carnal and I'm trying to make money off your ass. Somehow grift off you somehow, right? Stop that shit. Real people show shit by their behavior. They don't fucking, okay, yeah, I've got a YouTube channel and I'm talking it up. But in real life, people show you by their behavior. Okay, I'll give you another one. It takes 55 hours, according to human physiology. I got this one from Andrew Bustamante, that CIA book author guy. He puts a bunch of studies in his book. And he said that it takes 50, I think it's 50, I could quote it slightly wrong. I want you to look it up and research it yourself. But I think he said 55 hours of quality one-on-one time can't be had as a coworker at work where you're just stuck with someone all day. It has to be good one-on-one time where you felt like empowered and good and they felt empowered and good. It takes 55 of those hours to become acquaintances with someone. And you can't put all 55 in 2 days. It has to be spread out. It's like 55 weeks or maybe twice a week or something. You'd be looking at like 20 weeks or something. That's a long time to become an acquaintance. 20 weeks of a couple hours a week of quality one-on-one time to become an acquaintance. And if you try to do it any faster, it is a rip-off to your physiology because your human physiology is not made to like or trust people before that period of time's passed. There's also a Dunbar number. The average human being cannot have more than 155 people that they are interested in and care about and can monitor. That's why city living dupes people, because you can't care about anyone because you're so surrounded by thousands of people. It overloads your brain and your empathy circuits, so you don't know what the fuck to do. But not only that, it takes like over 75 hours to become medium friends with someone and 250 to become good friends. So like if you're getting married in under a year, you haven't even established friendship. You're violating your own physiology. Here's another one. So this one's kind of a big one. So I used to be a very bury your heart at Wounded Knee reading kind of a teenager. And I would get furious about everything that happened to the natives. I got so mad that I can barely even tell you. But then I started reading the history of the world. And I started getting mad at what happened in every country of the world. Then I realized that every single country has had all the people who are halfway decent have either been slaughtered or disabled. And the people who've been breeding, no matter what group you belong to, ad nauseum, are not the same group. Okay? A lot of the really decent ones of us did not survive, and they are not here today because they stood up to it to the point of death. Our parents reproduced. I did, Wolf. I got a McDonald's order here. Or no. Swim does. Hold on. A little bit order wasn't quite enough for the drive. So I started thinking about it, and I was like thinking about, because I started reading all these books on slave ships, and they were giving in-depth details of how the slave captains kept people in line. So I'll tell you a little something about slave ships, and it does have to do with what I'm talking about. The captain of a slave ship would have to build up a persona or an image for himself as if he was Satan himself, and that he had a panopticon in the mind of every person on the vessel, and he had to convince them of that. And he had to have, a lot of people will say, spiritual or manipulative help in order to do that, because he had to have all the people living in spiritual terror. Like, I read a bunch of books on slave ships. The captain of a slave ship would hold the people on the ship in spiritual terror. He would do things. Now, one of the things they would do is the people who would man the slave ships were actually usually people. A lot of times what they do is they'd get like people who were already in prison and were going to be in there for the rest of their life and die there. All right. And they'd say, if you want to get out, you can get on the ship and go work on the slave ship, but you're still a slave. Like, you're just a slave who controls other slaves. And if you try to leave the slave ship, we're going to kill you too. All right. And it's going to be in a real bad way. So the slave captain would do things like he would tell people that the under the ocean had a hell that was worse than anything you could imagine, and that he would indoctrinate the people on the ship that their soul or their body wouldn't be able to go back to their family or their land if they died in the ocean. And people who committed mutiny, he would, like, a lot of times they would chop them in pieces and throw them in the ocean in front of other people to scare them, like, hey, you're not gonna go back to your ancestors, this, that. But if they're gonna do that, they're gonna do that with low value captives, ones they could already cut loose. The other thing they would do is they would take the children on the ship and they would have them spy on the adults in exchange for favors. And so they turn them into like essentially prostitutes who got special favors by having sex with the people who manned the ship, and they probably got horrible diseases, you know that. And then were given a little extra food, and so they were being mentally controlled to spy on their own people. Not only that, they would separate you by language, so that you weren't allowed to speak on a slave ship. If they heard you whispering, they would separate you by language so that it would be hard to whisper. You'd have to yell across the room, but if you did get caught talking, it would be really bad news. You weren't allowed to talk. So you weren't allowed to use your language. You're chained up. The people who are watching you are also slaves, by the way. They just got a little more power. And then the slave captain is running a terrorism campaign. It's the only reason there's not a mutiny, because there was a lot of mutinies on slave ships, actually. The people who manned the ships even, and the people that were slaves and the ones who were being transported would sometimes figure out how to man the ship and get rid of the captain. So the captain had to really make sure that he scared the shit out of people on a spiritual level. So they really had to play with doctrine to terrify people. Okay? Even with that being said, when you read the stories, there are women who got pregnant on those slave ships, and they knew where they were headed. They knew what was going on, and they jumped into the depths of the ocean. Okay? So, one of the things, and I know you guys may disagree with me, but I started to, I was in a sort of meditative state. And something came to me that is going to be like, oh, this sounds so wrong. But it was an intuition. And the intuition was that hundreds and hundreds of years before the natives were exploited, before they were put into genocide camps, they were told by the people that were living in other countries, that were living tribally, that if you don't proactively come over here and assist us, those of us who are decent will get killed off. And the majority of us that will remain are going to be like orcs, like the kind of orcs like in the Lord of the Rings that eat flesh, like they're going to have no heart. And those people are going to be what's left of us. And we're going to be, because they're going to be living in domestication, and then they're going to come over and they're going to harass you and do the same goddamn thing to you that was done to them. So if you think that living in domestication is no life at all, then if you're a native and you were put in a genocide camp, that sucks for you, and I don't like it, but I just want you to know that the white people living in Norway, Germany, England, and all that had that happen to them thousands of years sometimes before it happened to you, and were living in domestication where 2/3 of their women couldn't reach adulthood for hundreds of years straight because of all the fucking way they were living in their cities. And like, they were, all the people that were trying to stand up to it who were tribal were getting killed off over and over again, and they were living in such a state of pitiful living that eventually they turned into orcs and they came over and they attacked you. But what do you expect? You got to live another 1,000 years as free tribal people without living in a goddamn city. You should be thankful for that. If anything, we're just equal now. Because I could say that there's an argument that Germans and Normatics and like other groups of white people who were enslaved and brought out of their tribe before you were could be bitter that they were enslaved thousands of years before you were, and they could be angry about that, and they could feel that you're being self-righteous by turning on them and saying like, oh no, you're commandeering shamanism. No, these people were domesticated before you were. You still have a shred of your wildness left. You shouldn't be trying to encourage them to be more domesticated if you don't think that life is worth anything. Yeah, I don't do no racist. So I mean, I guess Deadwolf, you can get off my channel then, because I don't do racism at all. Because I realize the human race is fucked. The human race is fucked, and you're gonna find fucked up white people, you're gonna find fucked up black people, you're gonna find fucked up every race on earth. So then I guess if you're a racist, just get off my channel and never show up again. I don't want to see you here. Bye.